So in our last video, we built out the backend for our real-time chat app, the parts that post messages to the server and retrieve messages from the server and load them up into our real-time app. And we saw how we can add a message to the chat log and post it and retrieve it. But we noticed that when we add a message, it doesn't show up in the other window. Just again to show that it shows up in this person's real-time window, but it doesn't show up until a refresh in the other window. So how do we make this happen? Well, Laravel provides a couple tools to make this super simple. The first of which is event broadcasting. So if you're familiar with Laravel's event systems, events kind of announce to your whole application that something has happened. And if you look at a couple options you have within Laravel PHP Artisan, we can create a event using PHP Artisan make event, and that will make an event class, and then you can trigger that event using a couple helpers, which we'll talk about. But I think the first event that we want to do is create an event that says, hey, a message has been posted, and then we'll issue that to our application. So I'm going to start by typing PHP Artisan make event, and I'm going to call this class message posted. So you'll notice a lot of things are in here, and a lot of them are actually going to relate to how we are going to use this event. We have a private and presence channel in here. Private channel just means that we're going to be able to broadcast that to the front end in a private fashion, like not all users are going to be able to subscribe to that event. Presence channel we'll talk about in a little bit, and then should broadcast just kind of enables all of this event broadcasting that we'll use. But first we need to set up this event and get it working within our flow. So if we load up our routes file again, we look at our storing our new message here, and we are just returning an OK status. But what if we here announce that a new message has been posted, and here there is a helper that lets you fire an event just like that, and it's very simple. What we'll do then is pass in our new message posted event, and then any arguments we have for that. Of course, we need to include this, so we can maybe do use app events message posted. And then we need to decide what we want to send to our event. So definitely we want to send the message. And the really nice thing is that anything you send to an event as a public or a public property will be available as that event gets passed around and listened to in different parts of your application. So if we accept, for example, a message of message, we can assign it to this message equals message. And of course we need to include app message. You include the model that way, and set a public property right here. So that is set. Now what's interesting about this is that when you create a message, you will get a message string. So let's go inspect what a message looks like. We can find, let's get the first message. Notice that we don't get the whole user object. We get an ID, and that's fine on the back end because we can always query for a user. But it's a little bit more difficult to use that on the front end because we want the user's name and potentially other information like their email address. So normally when you want to load more than one model, you can use eager loading, and we aren't using eager loading here because you have your user object already. Then you create your message object, and you will get a message object back from this function called create. So we can definitely pass that right in, but how are we going to get the user? Well, one option is maybe to query for the user here and assign him or her to the event as a public property. But maybe what we'll do, since we already have the user object, is just pass it in as a second argument here. And so we will accept a user as well and add that in. And include it. Okay, so this is going to create an event and not, nothing's listening for it quite yet, so we won't see any direct benefits. But this is kind of where the second part comes into play, and that part is Laravel Echo. Laravel Echo, and you can read the documentation on this, but is essentially a front-end broadcasting system that hooks up to a third-party WebSockets API. So Laravel doesn't come with WebSockets, but you have a few options. You can use Pusher or I don't know, sockets. What is it? Socket.io. Or you can run your own WebSocket server, which I don't know how to do. So I'm just going to use Pusher. They have a nice free plan. So when you're logged into Pusher, after you've created an account, you can create apps, and you'll get a few items, keys, and an API key, and a secret, and that sort of thing. So you'll want to copy and paste those into your environmental file. And if you look at your .m file, there's already slots for Pusher app ID, Pusher key, and Pusher secret. So this is where you would want to add those keys. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, I've added my keys in. For Pusher, there are a couple other steps we need to do to enable event broadcasting in our app. First, we'll want to go to our config app.php file and enable event broadcasting underneath providers. So we'll just uncomment this. And so that means that we can start using the broadcast service provider. Next, I always tend to refer to just the event broadcasting section on the Laravel docs, because I think you do need to add some dependencies. The Pusher PHP server is kind of the backend for Pusher, so I'm going to add that with Composer. And they have other options for using certain things like clusters and encryption. The next part of the puzzle is Laravel Echo. Laravel Echo is already stubbed out in your bootstrap.js file. And so it's as easy as uncommenting, and you can add in your Pusher key here. So I will do that. Okay, I've added my Pusher key. And finally, in order to use the Laravel Echo portion of Laravel, you will need to install some Node.js dependencies. So let's find where that is. I know it's somewhere in here. Okay, npm install save Laravel Echo and Pusher.js package, since we're using that broadcaster. So now that Composer's probably done, we can run another npm install for Laravel Echo and Pusher. Okay, looks like that is installed. I'm going to restart my npm run watch to rebuild and watch for changes. Okay, so we've created our message posted event, but now we want to get this working on the front end, and we've installed our dependencies. So how do we get Laravel Echo to start picking up our events? Well, we can hop into our app.js file, and once this app has been created, what we want to do is listen for events broadcast to a specific channel or something. So luckily, bootstrap.js, we set up window.echo. So that means we can access Echo at the root scope there, and say echo.channel if we had a public channel, but I think we would want users who are logged in to be able to read the channel only. So we can use what's called a private channel here, and then we'll pass in a channel name. And for this purpose, I think channel name of Chatroom would be a good option. So I'm going to use that. And normally this would be excellent, and we could just hop in and listen to an event name here, and handle an event here. But there's actually a cool feature in Laravel Echo called a presence channel. And I showed that to you a little bit earlier, but if I hop down to the docs for this, there are two parts to a presence channel. Basically, you will Echo join them, and it has a channel name just like any other channel, but that comes with a few new functions called here, joining, and leaving, so you can see what users are in the presence channel, or the kind of the public channel at the time of joining. And as a new user joins, you'll get their information. As a new user leaves, you'll get their information. The other catch to this is that you have to authorize a presence channel no matter what. So that is the method with which you will pass the user's information to the front end, so that they can interact with other users. So we'll have to do two things to get this working, in addition to setting up the back end to broadcast to this public channel. But let's set up the front end to get this started. Let's change private to join. So it's going to join the chat room. We're going to have some new methods called here, joining, and leaving. You can still listen for event names as well, which is great. So we're going to use our message posted as the event name, and then head back to our message posted class. In order to enable the broadcast, we need to use this broadcasting contract. So I'm just going to implement should broadcast, and then we need to choose an event or choose a channel. Now we have a private channel slotted here so far, but there's also a presence channel. So I'm just going to actually change this to presence channel, and then choose the channel name we chose on the front end, which is Chatroom. We do need to go to our channels routes file, and I think this is new for Laravel 5.4. This used to be in a different section of the app directory, but it's now its own routes file, which is kind of neat. I'm going to kind of copy this, and I'm going to say broadcast on channel Chatroom. We want to accept a user object, and normally this is where you check, is the user allowed to be in this room? Or they have access to this room? We're just, normally you would return true to always let them in if you're authorizing other channels, but since this is a presence channel, what we need to do is provide the user's information. So we can do, we're just going to return this actual user object, and then we can pick out like the username and ID and everything from that. So now, anytime this event is triggered, we will broadcast to this presence channel called Chatroom. And double check our front end. We are going to listen for a message posted event that gets broadcast to this public channel. And let's console.log out this event when it comes in. Do a refresh. Hello again. Wonderful. So now we are getting in the log our event, which is a message object and a user object. So I could parse the message and the user from this. And if I refresh, and maybe I will post from Icy's account, I get her message here, and Icy Waters, and her message is hello from Icy. So that's awesome. Now we want to just push that to our messages data field so that it pops into the chat log as well. And that should be pretty straightforward if we hop back to our app.js file. When we're listening for a message posted, we want to add two messages. So we'll do push, and then we'll add a new message object, which will be message is message e.message.message. Kind of repetitive, but the user object can be e.user.name. And we don't need to log it out anymore. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to say hello from Josh. All right, it popped in there. A couple things are happening. First of all, my username didn't make it in for some reason, and I wonder why that is. Message.user.name. So it's expecting a nested username. So I'm gonna go ahead, be ballsy here, and just pass the whole user object. And that should suffice because the name property is part of that. I'm going to refresh our screens again. Hi again. And I'll send this once. So now I get hi again, Josh Larson, but you'll notice I get two hi agains here. And that is super interesting. So that's happening because we are both adding this to our own chat log because of that interactive, view component that we have, but also the view component is listening for events and adding any messages that come in, so it's duplicating here. This is easily solvable thanks to Laravel. They have a method on the broadcast, so this can either be event or broadcast, and when you use broadcast, you can call to others, and this is just going to call to any users that is not the current user. And if we give that another test run and say, how's it going? See, it only pops up here once and then there once, so that is working marvelously. Finally, we have this chat room presence channel, but we're really only using it as a private channel right now. But what if we had some sort of way to display like who's in this chat room or how many people are in the chat room, and then monitor when people come and go? So luckily this Laravel Echo tool is very easy to implement, so we can say see which users are here. I'm going to get a users array. And what should I do with this array? Let's set it to maybe a property in our root application. So I'm just going to say users in room is empty to start out with. But when we join the chat room, we will get that this users in room is users. So how can we use this? So users in room will be an array. And if we look at our chat app, we have this panel and we have the heading chat room. So what if we added like a badge that floated to the right, and we did like span class badge that said how many users are in the room? So it would be like 1 user in the room, 3 users in the room. We could do users in room, because this is a Laravel, or sorry, it's a Vue data property. It's technically within the Vue app. And in order to use this, we need to add an @ symbol, because otherwise Blade is going to try to parse that value. So let's add this here, and right now we'd be printing out the array, but we really just want to print out the size of the array, so we'll do .length and give that a shot. Hit refresh. Okay, so it lists 2, which is true because there are 2, and if I take IC away, it still says 2. So you'll wonder why is that? Well, because we're not updating that value when the presence channel changes, and that's very easy to do. Luckily, I'm also going to just add a pull right here to make it pretty, and it should go to the right. Nice. Back in our app.js, we have a method called joining and leaving. So when someone leaves, we get their user object, and we can do something with it. So one way to update the users in room data property without this user would just be to assign it to this users in room is this users in room, but filter it so that the user in the room should not equal the user that has left. So this is saying get all users in the room, filter them, and each user check if it is not the user who left, then they can stay in the users in room, otherwise they need to go. So let's give that a shot. Refresh both screens here. We have 1, we have 2. This one did not update for some reason. Oh, because IC joined after we haven't implemented join yet. But so let's say Josh leaves, then this number should go down to 1. Okay, it did. Awesome. And when he comes back, it stays at 1, but we have not implemented the joined method. So let's do pretty much the same thing. We'll do joining. That person gets a user object, and we will do this users in room push the new user. So that's pretty straightforward. For consistency, I'll just do this, but it's not necessary. Okay, and then when IC leaves, goes down to 1, but when IC comes back, goes back up to 2. Very cool. All right, so we've added some really cool interactivity to a real-time chat application with Vue, Laravel, Pusher, and Laravel Echo. The last step in the next video will be just trying out Laravel Dusk, which is new in Laravel 5.4, and writing tests to actually see this real-time activity happen, which has been very difficult to do before Laravel Dusk. So that's it for now.